Welcome to the English Epics channel, she said. I couldn't do it. I was sitting at the kitchen table when my wife returned home from the grocery store. She noticed a notebook on the table in front of me and a pen in my hand, then asked, "What are you doing?" I decided to take on your challenge. I don't recall. Remember last week when we were reading those stories on that website? I commented on how bad some of them were and said that even I could write better. You said I couldn't, that I didn't have a creative bone in my body. I suppose I did say that, but my comment was based on what I know about your grades back when we were in school. You always got B's and C's for your assignments in classes that required written reports. And you got a C for the report you had to complete for your business research and writing course. Well, I think I can do better now. It doesn't matter. Come on, help me bring in the groceries. I helped her bring in the bags and tidy up a bit, then sat back down at the table and continued writing. While preparing dinner, she asked, "What's it about?" I won't say anything. I'll let you read it when I'm finished, and you can critique it before I post it online. I didn't think it would be too difficult. Sure, everything I did in college didn't earn me great grades, but back then, I didn't need them. I only did what was necessary to survive those classes. I didn't want to be there at all, but my parents more or less forced me. Dad wouldn't let me work in the family business without a bachelor's degree in business management. I had worked there after school and during summer since I was 13, and I wanted to work there full-time after high school. But Dad said no, only with a degree. It's essential if you want to work full-time. So I resigned myself to it. I got my degree and went to work in the family business. I lowered my gaze to the notebook, picked up my pen and started writing. My name is Josh Barnum. I'm an aircraft mechanic for a major airline and married to Melinda Barnum. Melinda, I call her Melly, is an office manager at an insurance company. Melly and I have been together for just over 11 years, 9 of which we've been married. We met in our sophomore year of college, and for me, it was love at first sight. For Melly, maybe. It took me 3 months to convince her to go on a date with me, but we clicked. On our 7th date, we made love for the first time. After that, we became a steady couple and usually made love 2 or 3 times a week, at least until summer. That summer, I had a job working for my Uncle Bill, who owned a landscaping company. I worked 10 to 12 hours a day, Monday through Saturday. As a result, I rarely got to see Melly during the week. After 3 weeks of only seeing each other on Sundays, Melly started dating other guys. When I complained about it, she told me to either accept it or lose my Sundays with her. That was a defining moment in our relationship. I've already mentioned that, for me, it was love at first sight when it came to Melly, so I gave in to avoid losing her completely. At the time, I didn't realize what a mistake that was. It showed her that she could get away with a lot when it came to me, and I would let things slide. 3 weeks later, on a Friday, I had only worked 6 hours before storms forced us to call a break. I called Melly to see if she would go out with me that evening, and she told me she already had a date planned. I hung up the phone without saying another word. I called around to see if anything was going on and found out that Mike Matson was hosting a party at his place. I called to check if I was welcome and, after hearing I was, decided to go. Bad decision on my part. I arrived just in time to see Melly hugging and then kissing Dick Muir. They moved to an improvised dance floor where Melly pressed herself against Muir, and they started slow dancing. Muir held her firmly below the waist with both hands, pulling her tightly against him. Melly wrapped her arms around his neck, pulled his face close to hers, and gave him a long, passionate kiss. When the song ended, they reluctantly pulled away from each other, or at least that's how it seemed. But as soon as they did, Melly saw me. She said something to Dick, and then started walking toward me. I turned around and left the party. Damn if I was going to stick around while she kissed someone else. On Saturday, the weather was decent, so I ended up working a 12-hour shift. I had learned not to waste my time, calling Melly on Saturday evenings to schedule a Sunday date because she would usually have plans with someone else. Instead, I would typically call her around 10 on Sunday morning to arrange something for later in the day or evening. But that Sunday morning, I didn't call. It was one thing to know she was dating while I was unavailable, but it was another thing entirely to know she was kissing her dates. The passion I had noticed between her and her date at Matson's party made me wonder if they were also having sex. This planted a troubling thought in my mind. According to what Melly had told me, that she never went out with any guy for more than 4 dates. The question I kept asking myself after what I saw at Matson's was, had Melly slept with all of them? If that were true, I could be in trouble because we usually made love during our Sunday dates, and I had heard and believed that when you have sex with someone, you're essentially having sex with everyone they've been with. I thought it might be a good idea to get tested for STDs. Thinking that since Melly hadn't heard from me on Sunday morning, she might call me, I got out of the house and stayed away the entire day. When I returned home for dinner, my mom told me that Melly had called twice and wanted me to call her back when I got home. I waited until I finished eating to call her. She wasted no time. Why didn't you call me this morning? I just figured, after seeing you kissing that guy, that I'd been replaced. We've already talked about this, Josh. I'm not going to stay home just because you can't come over. I know, and I made peace with it when I thought these were just platonic dates. But what I saw was far, far from platonic. I thought we had something special, Melissa, but now I'm not so sure. Don't say that, Josh, we do. Have something special. We need to talk, baby. I don't care how late you work tomorrow, but when you're free, come over to my place. Will you do that? I think I can. Promise. Fine. I'll come as soon as I can. Monday was a 12-hour workday, so I didn't get to Melly's house until almost 9 in the evening. Her mom answered the door and told me Melly was waiting for me in the back patio. Melly was on the phone, standing with her back to the door when I stepped outside. What I overheard before she ended the call didn't bode well for our relationship. What I heard was, I really enjoyed Friday night. I can't wait to see you on Tuesday. I've got to go. He'll be here soon. Bye. I went back into the house, then opened the patio door with a loud noise so she would notice me coming out. She turned and saw me walking out of the house. I didn't show any sign that I had overheard anything, just walked over to the table and sat down. I simply looked at her and waited. Eventually, she realized I wasn't going to start the conversation, so she said, "What's wrong, Josh? You agreed to let me go on dates when you can't make time." Yes, but I thought those dates were more like going to the movies and maybe grabbing a milkshake at Harry's, or perhaps attending a party like the one at Matson's, where you dance and hang out with our friends. Simple things. You're acting like you're still my girlfriend. What I saw at Matson's didn't feel like that. The way you kissed that guy and let him run his hands all over your body without even trying to stop him told me a lot. If he's not already sleeping with you, he probably will be soon. Not exactly how I expected my girlfriend to behave in front of my friends. That's a disgusting thing to say to me. It's the truth. Maybe you should just leave. That's probably for the best. After what I saw, and not knowing how you handle all your dates, I think it's a good idea for me to get tested. I stood up and left her there with a shocked expression on her face. I had made it to my car before she caught up with me. You don't really think that about me, do you? What I saw on Friday night was pretty rough, Melly. I don't want to take any chances. I got into my car and drove away, leaving her standing there, watching me go. I did get tested clean, but I never called Melly to tell her. We avoided each other for justice over a week, and then, on Thursday, while I was having lunch in the student cafeteria, Melly came over to my table, sat down, and said, "You didn't call me on Sunday." There was no need. You're being unfair, Josh. Why do you expect me to sit at home 6 days a week? Because of your job. Maybe because I see it as preparation. What the hell does that mean? Maybe it's to prepare you for what you might have to do after you get married and your husband has a job that keeps him working late. That's just ridiculous. Being married is nothing like going to school. Maybe that's how you see it, but not how I do. You've known all along that I planned to propose to you after graduation, and you made me believe you'd say yes. You know my major is aviation maintenance management, and when I graduate, I'll have my airframe and power plant license. My goal is to work for an airline and climb the career ladder. There's a damn good chance that when I do land a job at an airline as a rookie, I'll have the worst shift and the worst days off. If you can't handle my work schedule now, how are you going to handle a shift from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. with Tuesdays and Wednesdays as my days off? That's different. I'll be working too, and we'll do whatever we have to in order to adapt to our circumstances. That's in the future, assuming we even have one. Right now we need to survive as a couple, and I'm not sure we can, given what I now know about your dating habits. We agreed to talk that evening after I finished work, and in the end she gave in and promised to only go on dates on Fridays and Saturdays, always ensuring they were in the company of my friends. That way, I could always ask someone if she was doing anything that wouldn't pass the boyfriend test. It helped that landscaping was a seasonal job that ended in late fall. For the rest of our course and throughout graduation, I kept a close eye on her. She only slipped up 3 times, and I pretended not to. Notice. Why? Blame it on love. After we graduated, Melly moved in with me, and we lived together while our parents prepared for the wedding. It was a new experience for both of us, being able to make love every day without worrying about rushing back home. There were nights when I wasn't sure I'd be able to get out of bed the next morning. It seemed all Melly wanted. And oh yes, I wanted it too, was to keep making love constantly. But of course we couldn't. I landed a job with an airline, and as expected, I got the worst shift 4 p.m. to midnight, with Wednesdays and Thursdays as my days off. Melly had a degree in accounting and got a job at an accounting firm, working from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with Saturdays and Sundays off. During tax season, from late January to early May, she typically worked 10 to 12 hours a day and occasionally had to work on Saturdays. We got married 5 months after graduating, and our wedding gift from both sets of parents was the down payment on a 4-bedroom ranch house in one of the best neighborhoods in the city. Neither of us wanted kids until we were established in our careers, so Melly used one of the bedrooms as a home office. At the back of the house was a fairly large patio, and one of our first purchases after moving in was a hot tub, which was installed on one side of the patio. It didn't take long before it got plenty of use. A month after the hot tub was installed, we hosted a housewarming party. After everyone tried out the tub, it seemed like we had people over almost every weekend. Not that I particularly enjoyed the company. I had to leave by 2:45 p.m. to make it to work on time. As we got to know our neighbors, we started getting invited to barbecues and picnics, and of course once that began, we had to host a few of our own. We became really good friends with the neighbors on either side of us and the family living directly across the street. For the first 2 years, everything went great, and we adapted well to our different schedules. Then everything changed. I found out much later, but it was very much what I had talked about with Melinda back in college. I worked on Fridays and Saturdays, and Melinda grew tired of staying home on what she called the prime dating nights. At first, it was Friday night outings with the girls after work, nights she never told me about. A couple of months later, she decided that if she got away with me not finding out about her Friday outings, she could also get away with going out on Saturdays. She just had to make sure she was home and in bed by the time I got back. She started going on dates with guys she worked with and guys she met at parties. I don't know when this nonsense began, so I had no idea how long it had been going on. I found out about it from the neighbor who lived across the street. He was having drinks with a client on a Friday night after dinner when he saw Melinda dirty dancing with some guy and acting like she was easy. Saturday morning, while Melinda was out grocery shopping, he came over and told me what he'd seen. It upset me, but it didn't surprise me. He told me that his brother was a police officer who worked as a private investigator on his days off, which happened to be Fridays and Saturdays. His brother charged only 25% of what a full-time private investigator would, so I asked him to help arrange for his brother to contact me. The total cost for having him follow Melinda from the time she left work on Friday until she got home, and on Saturday from when I left for work until she returned home, was $600. It was worth every penny. On Friday, when Melinda got off work, she went straight to a bar. She hadn't even settled on to a bar stool when a guy bought her a drink and danced with her. By 8 p.m., they left the bar together and checked into a Motel 6. And yes, they left the light on. They stayed in room 107 until 11 p.m., after which she went home. On Saturday, she didn't even leave the house. At 4 p.m., Philby, her boss, arrived. Although Spencer, the police officer, couldn't capture what was happening inside the house, he got some pretty clear shots of Melinda pleasing her boss while he sat on the edge of the hot tub and then having sex with him on the cushions in the tub. On my first day off, I took everything I had to a divorce attorney. After reviewing the evidence, the attorney suggested filing an alienation of affection lawsuit against her boss and considering legal action against her company if their policies and procedures manual included anything about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. Her boss owns the company, and when I mentioned this to the attorney, I could almost see dollar signs in his eyes. I told him to go ahead and get started. He said to give him a week or so, and he would have the documents ready for me to sign. I left his office hoping I could act like the clueless fool I had been before receiving Spencer's report. Apparently I pulled it off because Melinda didn't seem to notice anything different about me. A week later, the attorney called and told me he had the papers ready for my signature. When I went to his office, he was smiling and said he had some very good news for me. It seemed that her boss had been bragging to everyone in the office about sleeping with Melinda. I'm not a lawyer, but isn't an overheard conversation just hearsay? Basically a case of he said / she said. Maybe, if it hadn't been caught on tape. The person who gave me the recording hates Philby and is always looking for ways to cause him trouble. Isn't there some law that says both parties must be aware of being recorded? In some states, yes, but ours isn't one of them. All right then, go ahead and do whatever you think is best. I finished the story, reread it, and decided it was fine. It was almost dinner time. I called my wife from the kitchen and handed her the story, asking her to read it and give me her thoughts. She took the story and began reading it. About halfway through, she started frowning, and finally she let out a loud gasp, looked at me, and fainted. I stood up, grabbed a glass of water, and splashed it on her face. She mumbled something as I helped her up. Just then, the doorbell rang, and I told her it was probably for her. She looked confused as I walked her to the door. Standing there was a young blonde woman. The blonde paused her gum, chewing long enough to ask, "Mrs. Melinda Barnum?" Melinda said yes, and the blonde handed her an envelope saying, "You've been served. Have a nice evening." Melinda didn't catch the last part. She fainted again when she heard she'd been served. This time I didn't bother with a glass of water. I simply grabbed her by the leg, dragged her into the house to close the door, and then went to the kitchen to grab myself a beer. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of English Epics. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.